If someone brought up, what about all the genocide in the Old Testament? What would you say?
Well, for one thing, it's not ethnically directed. The same sort of language that is used of the Canaanites is also used of the Israelites and other nations that are living in rebellion against God and doing all sorts of atrocious things. So the sorts of language, this kind of language that is being applied to the Canaanites should not be understood in sort of an xenophobic or ethnically hostile way, but rather it's directed toward any kind of disobedience to God that becomes so corrupted and destructive of not only the culture itself, but also having an influence on cultures outside of that culture. Secondly, God waits for the sin of the Canaanites to be filled up. Genesis 15:16. So during the time of Abraham is not right for judgment. That comes 400 years later. You also have mention of the language of driving out the Canaanites, which if you're dispossessing or driving out the Canaanites, then you don't actually kill Canaanites. Adam and Eve were driven out of the garden. Cain was driven out from where he had been. The same language that is used there, it's applied to the Israelites driving out the Canaanites. You also have parallel to or next to passages that talk about people being obliterated. You also have language of lots of survivors. Read Judges 1 and 2. So if Joshua has done all that Moses commanded, which is repeated throughout Joshua, but yet we see throughout the book of Joshua survivors. In fact, in one portion in Joshua chapter 8, I believe, there are foreigners who are with the Israelites during the reading of the law by Joshua. And these are, scholars would concur, these are Canaanites themselves who are interested in
there. And I think Dr. Paul Copan down at Palm Beach Atlantic University makes a pretty persuasive case that when you read, say, in Deuteronomy 7, wipe out everybody, the women, the children, the cattle, that was called hyperbole. Why? Because if you read, it says, wipe everybody out. In the very next verse it says, and then don't intermarry with them. Now, wait a minute. If you're going to wipe everybody out, how could you intermarry? Why would you even have that command in there? Because what Copan is saying is that this was common language in the ancient Near East culture. They would use exaggerated terms to communicate that we're going to beat you. Just like we might say in a football, we annihilated that team. Oh, really? They're gone? No. It was